Well, good evening, everybody. Can I welcome you to the final overall scrutiny performance panel meeting of this municipal year. For those who don't know me, my name is Councillor John Walker and I'm the chair. Councillor Roy Lees on my left is the vice chair. Please note the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. Members in the chamber, when you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphone on, and then please turn your microphone off when you have finished speaking. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issues, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in. Thank you. Right. Apologies.
We got apologies from Councillor Alistair Bradley.
Right, thank you. Now, item 2, declaration of any interest. No, sorry, item 1 is minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January. Is this a true record of the meeting? Okay, a second. Thank you. Thank you. Any items from that meeting you want to bring up? Any problems? No? Excellent. Right. Item 2 is declaration of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any peculiar interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. None. Okay. Can we move on to item 3 then? Can I welcome Councillor Morwood, who is going to introduce the performance focus, planning and development.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. Always a pleasure to come before you, the highlight of the year. Right, you've got the report in front of you, which begins on agenda page 5. I won't take you through the first page. That's the purpose of the report and recommendations, so on. That's a standard that I'm sure you're familiar with at the front of all these reports. So I'll move straight on to page 6 and the background to the report, paragraphs 6 and 7. So this report will present an overview of the directorate as opposed to each executive member. It's an unusual directorate in that it's made up of 3 executive members, but that will become clear, or hopefully, as we go through that report. It will include a breakdown of the financial position, service level indicator performance, and progress of the corporate strategy projects. And the directorate itself includes the following services: planning services, spatial planning, and enforcement. We go down to paragraph 10. We look at the financial position. Like many of the directorates, the biggest spend in this directorate, as with all the directorates, is staffing costs. But if we look at paragraph 13, we find that, of course, there's been an overspend of 37,000, just over, which is due to mainly to an increase in professional fees, statutory notices, and legal fees within the planning service of 147,000. It's mainly a result of a significant number of planning appeals. As you'll be aware, we have had quite a number of appeals this year, which we've had to defend, and they are a costly business. There's been a reduction in the income from building control, plan fees and inspection fees of 79,000. And in addition, the pre-application advice service for planning applications has been suspended since 2020. And that would have had an additional 17,000 budget, which would have come into the service. Details of that, I'm sure, if you've got questions on that, I'm sure Adele, who is supporting me here this evening, will be able to add further information to that. I'm just checking. I'll go down to the performance indicators. You're familiar with those, the colour coding there, and I'll work through those further down the report. Paragraph 16 gives you the corporate strategy indicators, and I know this will be important to a number of you. Paragraph 16, the number of long-term empty properties. The target is 150, and at the moment we are at 125, which is far better than Q3 of last year and well below the target. But I'm sure you'll have questions along those lines. Also, a number of affordable homes delivered. The target is 50, and sadly at the moment we are only on 10. Paragraph 17 gives you a sort of breakdown of where the problems have arisen. In terms of planning, we allow applications to go through with our 30% affordable homes, etc. But a lot of these have yet to be built, and some have not. Some of the land that's still available hasn't come forward. So the number of affordable homes really is up to the developer, and at the moment they haven't been developing developing those properties as we would like. To help with that, you'll see in paragraph 18, towards the end of that paragraph, that the council is seeking to add additional housing stock as a registered provider, and at the present time is negotiating with a house builder on the purchase of a number of affordable homes. I'm not at liberty to go into the details of that because it's still under negotiations and discussions, and Councillor Bradley, who leads that directorate, is heading those discussions. So the paragraph 20, the local indicators for planning and development. You've got, first of all, the planning indicators, the minor, major indicators. The minor planning performance is at 98%, which you might think, even though it's got a green star on it, says it's worse than Q3 of last year. And that's because it's a great shock to Adele, because it's usually 100% and has been for some time. But so, whereas a lot of people would like 98%, Adele much prefers 100, but it's still a good performance. In terms of the major planning, that's decided within the 13 weeks as they're supposed to. We have 100%, as we usually are. But the percentage of planning appeals allowed, the target for that is 25%, and our performance is at 50%. So that is is worse than expected. And there's a little bit that gives some indication on paragraph 21 explains some of that. The major planning application decisions that have been overturned at appeal are quite high, because we've defended quite a number of significant appeals, safeguarded land, etc. And the target for a council to have your appeals overturned should be below 10%, and at the moment we are well above that, as it says at the bottom of that paragraph, at 21.9%. This is quite a significant percentage over what's expected, and I'm sure if you've got questions on that, Adele can add to that. But it is quite an important point to bring up. Spatial planning, the number of trees planted, we are at the point of this report, 61,272 trees planted, and as of last week, just to bring up to date, it's got up to 112,000. So we're well on target for the planting a tree for everyone in the borough, which is, I think, 116,000. In terms of enforcement, building control, applications decided within the 5 weeks, the target of 100%, and the performance is 100%. So we should be happy with that. So under projects, there are 3 in total. 2 are rated green and 1 is amber. So if we go to the bottom of page 9, paragraph 24, you'll see the projects that have been completed in terms of open space and so forth. A great number of completed projects which are listed there. Phyllis Nelson Memorial Garden, Riverside Crescent, Carbrook, Astley Lighting Scheme, etc. It goes across to page 10, and at the bottom of that for the first part there, there are more schemes in progress, on schedule. Wigan Lane archery facility, which I'm sure you're well familiar with, King George, Westway play area, Longfield Avenue Road, Safety and Meadow Street play area. Those are all in green and expected to be delivered well within the target time. The second project there, the lead activities to address climate change, including the tree planting. Gives you more details there, the wildflower meadows, climate change handbook, how that's been updated, etc. And bio-based fuel, which I must admit I'm not familiar with, but that I understand is on target and in the green zone. In amber is the delivery of affordable homes, and we've had, you mentioned that earlier in the report, some discussion there, and there's a bit more detail at the bottom of the page 10 that the council is negotiating with a developer to purchase up to 24 affordable homes, and I'd say that's an ongoing discussion that's being had, and 9 properties have been sourced to support the housing of refugees, and are at various stages of renovation, purchase and occupation. Paragraph 25 outlines the corporate strategy for 2023 to 23-24 in the coming year. So we'll continue with the delivery of the local plan, which is hopefully it's in its latter stages. Still a lot of work to be done, but the current local plan is due to come to an end soon, and we hope the new local plan will come along just about on time. Delivery of continue with natural green initiatives and green energy. That's a project that's within this, well, is going to be within this directorate. And just finally, paragraph 26 just outlines that the affordable homes part of that's in this current directorate will be changing to a different directorate for change and delivery in the coming year. I hope that's given you a brief outline of what is involved, and I'm sure my colleagues Zoe and Adele and myself will be able to answer your questions. Thank you.
Councillor, for that report. Questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to paragraph 13, you're saying that we are paying out additional significant costs to agency staff. Where are we at in terms of staffing? Are we back up to speed with it?
Adele, I think, will be able to, as her staff, we'll bring you up to date with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. As you probably will be aware, the labour market is very tight at the moment and challenging. And in my service area, we are currently carrying vacancies in planning services that we've had a failed recruitment on 2 occasions with very little interest. So they've got 2 senior planner posts still vacant. In building control, the service has been covered for quite a long period. I took over the responsibility of the service at the back end of last year, and I was very mindful that the service had been covered by temporary agency staff on recurring contracts. And I've done a bit of an analysis of that in terms of the work that's coming in. And moving forward, we're just about to go out to advert again to recruit. So we will be renewing the temporary contracts because obviously we've got to carry on with the service. And you know, we'll use best endeavours to attract you know, new employees, but there are still vacancies.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Kim.
Just on a similar note with the recruitments and stuff, are there plans to, because obviously you've got Zoe and Adele with different roles now, are there plans to have a director sitting above that? You know, what isn't there at the moment, or what's the crack with how that'll work going forward? I'll just be interested to know that. Thanks.
At the moment, there's no immediate plan to replace the director at this moment in time. And both Zoe and Adele felt it wouldn't have been appropriate really to just bring in someone for a short period of time. By the time they got their head round the whole thing, it would have been time to look for a full-time directorate. I'm not aware of any plans to rejig the directorates. I would hope there would be some rejiggings, but certainly of this directorate, because as you can see, it's very unusual to have 3 exec members inputting into one directorate. It usually has one, and certainly Zoe has been I think, an excellent addition to the group. But she too has problems with staffing and so forth. But I'm sure if they want to add anything further to that, they can do. But that.
Yeah, just to add on a little bit more, in terms of the staffing thing, the government have recognised, particularly in the planning profession, the difficulties, and there is currently a consultation underway by government to look at looking at options for putting a bit more resilience in the staffing areas for local planning authorities, and Councillor Marwood will probably be in a position to update you shortly once we've gone through it. It's literally hot off the press, so it is recognised, I think, at government that there are significant issues with staffing, professional staff that are qualified.
And I mean, I can just add to that. I mean, our problem is that because there's a shortage of these specialist staff, the private sector can pay a lot more than we can. So we have to kind of look at, as we have done in the past, getting people in and training them. That what we find is, though, you bring them in, we train them up, and then they are snaffled by others, including other local authorities.
Okay. Yes, right.
Right, thank you, Chair. Just a question on the affordable homes related. In the past 15 years, etc., we've been building roughly delivering over 500 houses per year on the last local plan. In the last year, how many have we delivered?
Probably one for Zoe. Can you?
Yeah, in terms of the completions, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's around the 200 or 300 mark. It's certainly gone down from those kind of 500 figures, so it is lower, as you would expect as you approach the end of a local plan period. So, as the report talks about, because of the supply of land is diminishing, so is general housing completions, and therefore affordable housing as part of that, because obviously, as we've touched on, generally 30% is secured on site as a developer contribution. But it's also important to remember that 30% is only 30% of eligible sites, so only sites over a certain size. So if they're a very small site, then generally they won't deliver an affordable housing contribution. And occasionally it's a financial contribution as opposed to a full unit. But yeah, generally our completions are decreasing, which is what you'd expect at the end of a local plan period.
Yeah, just to take that up further, obviously I think with recession and everything, prices going up, people are more not wanting to move house, and obviously new build is slowed down. But has that not had an impact on the affordable homes which would have been built within the new housing? Can you see where I'm coming from? A new housing development would have so many affordable homes in it. And therefore that's maybe one of the reasons why it's down.
Well, partly that, as always explained, they have to be a certain size, and the number of developments have slowed down towards the end of this local plan. They're all waiting to pounce on the new one. But I mean, to a certain extent, we've kind of held back on a recent. I can give an example of the recent planning application that's going through an appeals process, which was totally for 46 affordable homes, and if that had gone through, of course, we would have hit the target with ease. But so these things take time, and of course, some of the developers will come back and say, well, we were going to have so many affordable homes, but now we find it's not viable, and we have to, and so they come back and try and use all the, as you're aware, so all sorts of excuses to avoid building affordable homes. So we have to be mindful of that, and as I say, when we get the opportunity, perhaps not turn them down quite as readily as we did. But this
So are we getting a lot of those applications where they're coming back for?
No, if I could look at Adele, I mean, not recently, but certainly in the past.
Yeah, I know we had the big one now in East Green, but I'm just wondering if there's any more of that, you know.
From a development management perspective, I think, like Zoe said, where we're at in the plan period now, at the tail end of it, there is stuff in train that is relying effectively on some of the sites that would have been coming forward from the next local plan period. So say, for instance, Pear Tree at Exton, that's only currently getting going on site. So although there's a consent in place, you know, the build-out rate is generally, you know, circa somewhere between 30 and 50 units per year. And depending on the phasing will depend on where the affordable housing units will be. Anecdotally, I have seen a step change in where the approach developers were taking a few years ago, particularly like with the Eves Green, where we did have a viability case advanced that we challenged and pushed back on and had it forensically examined, really. So we still get the affordable housing on that one, but it's all still in train, and they're still building them out. So all the appeals that we've gone through for those housing sites, they were only for outline schemes. So we've still got to go
I think
through
what I'm
the
trying to
reserve
get
letters.
at, it isn't necessarily the council who's not delivering them, it's the developers who aren't building them. And
I don't think it's that they're
slow
not building them per se. I think it's, if you look at the plan period as a whole, I think that's got to be your measure, really. I mean, I don't know whether Zoe would agree with me, but for something like the delivery of affordable housing, it kind of like, it averages out over the plan period, so there will be peaks and troughs throughout that plan period. And like Zoe said, at this moment in time, we're at the tail end of the plan period, so this is one of the reasons why it's low now. I think earlier on in the plan period, there may have not necessarily been the 30% being provided on site because of viability cases that were put forward. But again, I haven't got that information to hand in terms of how many have been delivered over the plan period, but I think that's a key piece of information that you need to be mindful of.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Right, I've just got one or two questions, either Councillor Marwood or Adele. On paragraph 13, it says, in addition, the pre-application advice service for planning application has been suspended since 2020 on the anticipated budget. This overspend. Well, why has it been suspended? I thought this would help planning department, because if somebody comes in and says, look, do you think this is a good application, and you say no, then it doesn't come to the committee type of thing. Doesn't it help you having a information?
It depends where you sit in the development process. The reason it's been suspended from 2020 is simply the pandemic. At the start of the pandemic, we had to adapt very, very quickly. And it was very difficult to actually fulfil what is the statutory requirements of the planning service, i.e. dealing with the planning applications and other associated applications. The provision of pre-application advice is very much a discretionary function that a council can choose. And pre-pandemic, we looked at the types and nature of the pre-applications that were coming in for advice. We were receiving a lot of pre-application inquiries from agents who were acting on behalf of householders who were looking for the officers to effectively design their schemes for them, which I don't think is an appropriate use of council resources given the fees that we were charging. So what we did, we improved the supplementary planning guidance that's available for householders, and we signposted them to more information on the planning portal. So we made a conscious decision pre-pandemic that householder development could self-serve, if you like. You know, ultimately they would have plan drawers drawing for them. Those plan drawers are professional and should really know, you know, how to design a house extension. So that part of the service has been stopped for a longer period because we weren't charging for it. The vast majority of pre-application inquiries that were coming in were from speculative house builders, and you know, it wasn't a priority for us to hold a house builder by the hand and walk them through what they needed to do, because it, you know, as a council, our position was at that time, housing on safeguarded site was not acceptable. And ultimately it comes down to a question of capacity and resourcing. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have got significant gaps in our resources. So on that basis, at this moment in time, we haven't got the capacity to undertake pre-application advice. Some of it is helpful, but not all of it's helpful. And I think where the council are looking to undertake corporate projects, we will support that and you know, provide the advice for the council's own development projects, and provide the pre-application advice, because ultimately it's, you know, it's internally.
When you're determining whether it's acceptable or not, do you go back to them and say, look, we don't think this is acceptable, will you withdraw before you come to the committee? Or do you
No,
come to
no,
the committee?
that, I mean, the way an application is assessed is the same. You know, an application will come in, it's got the first hurdle to go through in terms of whether it's valid or not. So in terms of improving the chances of a developer being able to submit a valid application, we've refreshed the validation checklist twice now since 2020. So the developers can see what our expectations are for different types of applications in terms of the technical advice and the technical reports that we require. So on submission, if the documentation isn't there, we won't validate it, but we'll advise what information is needed to make it acceptable. As part of the statement of community involvement, a developer is advised to undertake consultation events with local community if it's a major development, and then ultimately once the application is submitted, we will review it. We will have ongoing dialogue and we will negotiate and we will seek improvements. It may be the improvements are sought as a response to the assessment by the case officer themselves, if it's a design issue. Amendments may be sought in response to statutory technical consultees that have been received. So a developer will have the opportunity to, we will work positively and proactively to help an applicant achieve an acceptable scheme. But if the scheme is so far from being acceptable, and it's essentially going to be a new application, then ultimately, you know, in the planning world, a refusal, setting out the reasons for refusal, is very much a signpost to how to make an application acceptable.
Okay, thanks for that.
Can I just add to that, Chair? I mean, as Adele has pointed out, so that was developers sort of trying to get some information early on when, as Adele's pointed out, you know, they should be doing the work, as it were. Once it gets to it's been validated, then they get the help and assistance. But in terms of your ordinary sort of householder wanting to know about, can I build this extension? I want to build a fence, how high can it be? And all that kind of simpler stuff. As Adele has pointed out, the planning portal has been vastly improved, and so there's a lot of basic information for your ordinary sort of householder to go to and find out, you know, do I need planning permission for this or not, and so forth, which is slightly different from the sort of major developers' work.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Can I just add one more thing to that? Because we do get a lot of queries from householders about whether they need planning permission, and we do signpost them to, even if they don't, and even if they believe that they don't, that we would always recommend that they apply for a certificate of lawful development, because when they come to sell their house, if they haven't got a piece of paper from the local planning authority confirming they didn't need planning permission, it can cause all sorts of problems. So even if a house owner doesn't actually need planning permission, it is highly recommended that they get a certificate of lawfulness, which is the legal proof that they didn't.
Yeah, fine. Thank you for that. Can you just explain now? I'm a bit confused about paragraph 20 about the percentage of planning appeals allowed. Now then, on here we got the performance is 50%, which is better than last year. but we should be working to 25%. Does that mean that we're refusing planning applications and the developers are then going to appeal? Am I right in thinking that?
Essentially, the data that's before you for the last year covers a very small number of appeals, and from a statistical viewpoint, it's almost anomalous, because I think there was a small number of appeals, and half were allowed. Some of them were allowed because there were decisions that had been made by a planning committee contrary to the officer recommendation. Some of them were recommended for approval and refused by the planning committee, and the appeals were allowed. So I think there's good governance within the committee structure. That 50% only covers a 12-month period. But basically what it means is half your appeals are allowed. Everybody has the right to appeal, but it's a small number of appeals. If you think that on, ballpark, we deal with circa 1,000 to 1,200 applications of one type or another per year, the number of these appeals that it relates to is probably 6. So in terms of quantitative numbers, it's very small. The next, over the page, the other number is over like a rolling 2-year period, and it's that period that picks up the major housing schemes, which is why it pushes it up, the number.
Right, but if it says that the DLUHC requires all councillors to stay below the 10% figure.
They do.
Our target is 25, and we're at 50, so we've a long way to go, haven't we?
Well, we have, but I think the council has made a commitment to the residents to make sure that, particularly the major housing schemes has been a particular issue over the last 12 months, and a lot of speculative development. And ultimately, yeah, we are below the standard, and that we are at risk of intervention from government.
I'm dwelling on this. If the planning the committee refuse an application, they're not forced to go to appeal, are they? Do you recommend them to say, if you come back with reducing the height of this or putting this, that, there, and other, then we'll bring it back to the committee? Do you discuss that with the developer?
Not all of the appeals relate to applications that have been determined by planning committee. The vast majority of appeals are actually against officer recommendations for delegated decisions, and they generally relate to householder schemes. The vast majority of those decisions are dismissed at appeal. If planning committee refuse a planning application, then we will always engage with the developers to see how they can make their scheme acceptable. But the vast majority of the major housing schemes that have been refused by committee couldn't be made acceptable because fundamentally they were considered to be unacceptable in principle.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
But presumably the big developers, I mean, the one in Town Lane, which was refused by the inspector, is coming back sometime to committee because they've come back with a different plan and what have you. But how long does this go on for?
It goes on for a very, very long time, because essentially, as well as us having issues in terms of resourcing, the planning inspector has had issues in resourcing and being able to actually appoint an experienced planning inspector to deal with the major planning appeals. So in the case of a major application, that will take, a period of time to be assessed and considered and reported to committee. Once that decision is made, the applicant then has 6 months in which to appeal for a major application. In the last 12, 18 months, if an appeal has been submitted, it's been taking a long time to actually set an inquiry date. And then following the inquiry date, it then takes an awfully long time for a decision to come out from PINS and the Secretary of State. Just as an example, we had an inquiry last summer in July for a new prison at Old Walton. That decision process is still ongoing, and we're now in March, so it does take a long time.
Right. Interesting. Yes. I mean, I suppose these things are so frustrating, aren't they? So becoming refused by the inspector and then coming back again and going through the same rigmarole again. It's all time consuming, isn't it?
It is, but just as a point of clarification, if a developer submits an application that's refused and then it goes to appeal and it's dismissed, we can refuse to accept a new application within a 2-year period.
All right, right. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. So coming back to the Town Lane one, is that coming back to committee soon?
I can't confirm or deny whether it will be soon, but what I can confirm is that there is still ongoing dialogue with the developer with regards to the highway safety matters.
I hope we come back to committee after May, then it won't concern me. Right. Can you just talk about building control, building inspectors? I understand you are short of building inspectors. Am I right in thinking that? So, but you've got down here, when I can find it, that building, where is it? Building control, applications decided within 5 weeks of validation, 100%. So, presumably, you say you're short of, but the applications, whatever they're doing, are being done within the time limit. Am I right?
They are, because the work is being done by agency staff at great expense. So although the vacancies exist, they are being covered by agency staff. In terms of quantity of applications, the building control regime is slightly different in so far as a developer can have a choice. They don't have to come to the local authority for their building control work. So it's a commercial entity, really. And at this moment in time, well, previously, we've not had a particularly large share of the market, if you like, for building control work. That is starting to change, and we are starting to rebuild a reputation. But at this moment in time, we have 3 building control officers who are all agency staff, covering 2 posts between them. And that's why I'm just going out to advert on to get in-house building control officers. So in terms of the number of officers at chairs and at desks doing the work, it's as per the structure. It's just that they're costing more money than the budget because it's agency staff.
So who pays the agency staff? Do the developers pay the agency staff?
No, the council pays it.
Right, right. But developers can use outside bodies for their own satisfaction, can't they?
Yes, they can.
Independent.
Yes, they can.
Right, right. And does those figures include this enforcement figure? If people are using outside agencies for their own satisfaction, rather than waiting for Chorley Council to come in and
which figure? Sorry, which figure are you referring to that it includes? Is it the?
Well, the indicator just says that the building control application decided within 5 weeks is 100%.
That's the work that comes directly to us. It's not the appointed inspector work.
Right. Okay. Right. I think I've finished about planning. Can I just ask Zoe about the local plan? The consultation's been completed, Zoe, has it?
It has, yes, indeed. It finished on the 24th of February.
Did he get a lot of letters and complaints and suggestions?
We did. There will be reports coming. There was a brief report, if you can access the papers, that was tabled at the local plan working group last night. So by all means, go on and have a look. It's an interim. We're not saying that those will be the final statistics, but it gives members of the response rate. So I think we got for issues and options. I think for issues and options, we've got about 1,200 online responses. But then we also got, I think, about 270 written responses, a variety of handwritten, email and PDF responses, which we're just working through those now, because in a way that does create a little bit of a problem in the sense that we have to process those. They need to be digitised, and then they'll need to be inputted onto the citizen space system by staff and by knowledgeable staff, because quite a number of them haven't adhered to the questions, so they've just sort of written kind of a narrative, a long narrative, and we need to kind of carve that up and input that into the citizen space system. So there's quite a bit of sort of resource intensive work to be done around that. But yeah, we saw a fairly good response in terms of the number of attendees at events. I think across Chorley it might have been about 500, something like that, across all of the events that we held. So quite a good spread of attendance, and that generally reflected where there's a number of sites proposed, although there was some anomalies, and there are numbers of those attendants in that report that I mentioned last night that went to local plan working group. So it would be of interest if that's something that you're really keen to have a look at. There is a bit of detail in there about some of the feedback that we received in those drop-in events, but there will be a detailed outcomes report that will probably come to Cabinet, I would say around May, June time, something like that, which will give much more detail in terms of the responses, the geographic spread of responses across Chorley, Preston and South Ribble. And then also some of the feedback from some of our statutory consultation or consultees, because, for example, the schools planning team, gave some feedback and some indication, high-level indication about the impact for school places as a result of the proposed development. Now we know that the sites may change, so it is only an initial preferred options part one, so the spread and number of development may change across central Lancashire, but the schools planning team are already starting to think about the impact on primary and secondary school places, and Highways England have a lot to say about active travel, so lots of really interesting feedback. Obviously the team now are just going to be sort of working through that all of that data and coming up with some headline themes in terms of where we take that as part of the next stage in the local plan making process.
Yeah, thank you. So basically now you contact Highways and say, look, all these people are complaining about this area and that area. What are your thoughts? Is that what you now do?
At the end of the day, that's...
Well, in terms of...
Go on, Zoe, yeah.
Sorry, Alistair, by all means, you can answer if you...
Carry on.
In terms of National Highways, so what Highways did, they kind of gave us a high level sort of impact in terms of their views on our policies, or those high level policy directions that we had in our preferred options part one. They gave some very high level feedback in terms of what we needed to consider from a policy perspective. So, for example, they'd noticed that in some areas, some of our rural areas, there was quite a quantum of development, and National Highways were saying they want to see the model and the assessment that Jacobs do on behalf of the county really take account of that impact on those rural areas and those rural roads. So what National Highways were saying is, you go away and work with county, but what we want to do is we want to work with the county. We want to see what model they're going to use before they input all of your sites into that model, and we want to be around the table so that we can influence that kind of assessment of the mitigation needed on some of the development and some of the schemes that will then go into the infrastructure delivery plan that would hopefully be delivered as part of the local plan in order to offset that impact of all of that development. So National Highways are really saying that they want to take a hands-on approach, really influence what transport infrastructure we put in place, and like I said, particularly around active travel and reducing or sort of mitigating the impact of the use of the private car, and trying to push more active travel and use of public transport so that the strategic road network isn't massively impacted going forward.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
I'll just add, it's
sorry.
quite interesting that, as Zoe's pointed out, so 500 odd replies and so forth, and we tend to think in this digital age, we thought it'd be everybody will look at every question and type it out and so on, but around 200 odd came through as just reams of information from an email or handwritten letters and so on. So Zoe and her team have to go through those letters, try and pick out which bit are you against, which question are you referring to, so that they can then tie up and generally say that we've looked at everybody's ideas and suggestions and thoughts and complaints and so on and put them in the right place. But it takes human beings at the end of the day to go through all those letters and try and pull out exactly what people are saying. So even this, I say, this digital age, the number of people who still prefer to use letter you know, handwritten and so forth. It was quite surprising.
Yes, I mean, I keep getting copies of letters that have been sent to the... There's one gentleman in Whittle, I think he must have written about 10 emails to me over the last 3 weeks. You'll know who it is, no doubt, Zoe. But and the long emails as well, set out all sorts of things for Whittle area, really. But I bet it's a complete pain. It will be over the next few months, I think, when they come back with some decisions. But anyway, thank you for that, I won't say well done, but I'm certain you'll come up with the right results for the benefit of Chorley anyway. So thank you for that. Any more questions? Right. Well, thank you, people in the planning department and the other areas. Thank you for being here tonight, and you may depart if you want to depart. Thank you. Thank you. This is my last performance panel meeting.
On the other side,
yes.
For a couple of years, and been your vice chair, and I've sat on this side 2 or 3 times. It's always been a pleasure. So enjoy your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Safe journey home. I don't know if it's still snowing or what it is outside, but anyway, take care. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Okay, we'll move on to the last item, which is item 4, the business plan for update 22-23. That's Howard, I understand.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm happy to bring the report on business plans. Just to recap, the business plans are set by the individual services. They contain a multitude of different projects, some small, some large, some complex, some not. And very much it's down to the services on the delivery, and what we're doing here tonight is providing you an update in terms of where we're up to. So we're towards the end of the delivery cycle. So we're actually going into the new business planning process. And we're kind of taking a bit of a different approach this year to try and make sure that services remain focused on a smaller number of priorities, and roughly around 5 to, sort of, we've said about 5 priorities per service. So you'll see some difference when we bring the next business plan project, and that's because, again, as I say, some of these are slightly smaller, some of them are slightly bigger, some of them are kind of part of the delivery service, and there's different understandings between services on their overall projects. However, in terms of where we are and with the current business plans, you can see that we are performing generally quite well. About 73% of projects are green or completed. So there has been significant track and delivery, and there is still to the end of this quarter. And the green indicates that we expect those to be completed by the end of Q4 this year. Obviously, there's lots of things to celebrate in terms of where we have been, and we've just given a bit of a snapshot on some of the key things that have completed or come forward, which is the people strategy, which is really important as I go into some of the other areas of the report where we are having issues with capacity and recruitment. So the development of the people strategy is really important to us as an organisation. But things with new systems and new equipment coming forward, again, will help to unlock some of these amber projects where there have been those elements around some of the ICT and technology. And we've got kind of new strategies coming forward as well. So we've got the economic development strategy that has been approved, and you'll have seen the new customer access charter as well that was recently approved, I think by Cabinet, or it could have been Council, I can't remember which, but that has recently been approved as well. So taking a focus on the actual projects themselves, particularly where we've got reds or ambers, we have 2 reds. Obviously, we don't like reds, but there are good reasons. So the flood defence work at Earls Way in Exton, there are particular land ownership issues there. So it's quite complex. and we've obviously got some turnover in the commercial services where there's new project managers coming in. So at the moment it's rated red because we need a plan on how we move that one forward, but it does involve lots of different homeowners, and the flood work, it's more to do with a culvert at the back of the properties that's impacting gardens. So it's a particular issue that is being worked through, and the council's trying to support residents on that. But there are a number of legal and land issues that need to be resolved. So as the new project manager comes into those services, they will start to look at that and see how the council can take that forward. The rent management system there for housing stock, again, this has been an issue due to capacity within the service. So the assets and property review will seek to address that as they come forward and implement that service model to provide the capacity to take that forward. Rent management still happens. This is about improving the processes and making it much more effective and less time consuming in terms of the way that it has to be managed at the moment. So like I say, there's no impact to the service in terms of us doing that work, but this is about making sure we can use our resources better. So they're the two red projects, and then moving into the amber projects. I don't intend to go into the detail that I've done there with the amber ones, and I'm sure you may have some questions around them, but there are some reasons stipulated in points 17 to 21. There's a number of varying reasons, but they generally tend to cascade from around capacity or resourcing into actually also ensuring that the council gets value for money. So particularly on procurement areas, this is where we've gone out to procurement, or the procurement hasn't been satisfactory in terms of the cost to the council. So that creates delays, and then we have to relook at how we do that. So again, it's around making sure we demonstrate value for money, and you'll see that in terms of some of the procurements in street scene. They are all going out to procurement, or possibly by the end of next week or the week after. So that is in progress, but there's been delays due to the fact that we haven't had the responses we've needed, or we've had to take a different approach to how that procurement takes place. The on-hold projects, I do want to just highlight those. So you'll see a number in there under the property services and development. They're on hold at the moment because we don't have an update in terms of the project managers have moved either out of the authority and new ones are coming in. So they're simply on hold in order to allow the project teams that are coming in to just understand the sort of where the project is up to, and then moving things forward. So that's why they're on hold. We expect those to get picked up pretty quickly. So that's the things like Bryn Baths, the space above Iceland and Ackhurst Lodge. It's not that they're not happening, it's that we need to just allow the officers some time to come in and review and take those forward. Also, the public protection was raised last time when we presented the business plans, and we provided information. So again, that is around, as Adele was saying, around some of the difficulties in recruiting into some of these service areas, like planning, like environmental health. And within that, there is no impact on the council's statutory duties on what they're delivering. But it does mean that some of this additional work that they would like to do hasn't been able to take place, which is more proactive based work, but any reactive and statutory based work. So when we're talking about animal welfare or health and safety, that is being met. These are additional programmes that are aimed to look at proactive sort of support and development. With that, I'll probably happily take questions. Obviously, there are 178 projects, so I will do my best to endeavour on which ones I can assist with. But as always, we will go back to officers and get a detailed response if you require any further information.
Any questions? Yes, Kim.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple of points. The Bryn Baths, I'm obviously reassured with what you just said because that's on hold. I do think, I mean, I know you've said that will be picked up shortly, but I understand at the moment that the Bryn Baths is not open, you know, for free for all swimming. It's only for group bookings, so I think that needs to be picked up sooner rather than later because basically the general public can't use the building. My other one was Another one in terms of on hold, again, Cowling Farm. I mean, the thing is, people have been left hanging on a shoestring for years for that, and I think council needs to make a decision, either they're going to do it or they're not going to do it. I mean, I know there's Gypsy Traveller site involved in that and some of the commercial and the housing, but I think every time I ask about that, it's just delayed. I think we're taking the mic a bit. In terms of the Ambers, the renewal and expansion of CCTV infrastructure, I'm a bit bothered about that one because I know there are a few issues that have come to light in our part of the borough recently, where CCTV's been out for 12, 18 months and another one's been out for 12 months and nobody had reported it up through the system. So the thing is, it's all good and well to be expanding on the CCTV infrastructure, but if we're not renewing the existing CCTV infrastructure, I know our particular issue's been sorted now, but I know the list that I saw that came back, it was quite extensive for the number of cameras that were out that the council paid for. So clearly there's a breakdown in communication somewhere between when a camera breaks and it getting repaired. And then my other one was the on the Greens, under democratic services, it says it's rated green for the District Council Health Scrutiny Committee. I don't think we've heard anything back for that for a long time, have we? So I'm surprised it's rated green, because I would have thought it was more of a red, because I didn't think it was going anywhere. We've talked about that for a long, long time, haven't we? I think that's it, really. Thank you.
Can I just, before how you come, I mean, as regards to travel, I thought, I mean, I don't, there was a set time to get a site for the travellers.
Well, that's another point, because I think we're under there was a planning application passed for Hook Lane that gave the council so many years, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, to start work on Cowling Farm. So if there's going to be more delays, then you know what's going to happen.
Well,
Thanks.
I mean, I don't know if we don't get a traveller site within a sector, whether we get fined or what. I don't know.
We do have an allocated traveller site, but obviously we're going into, I think it'll come up in terms of the later stage of the local plan later in the year, whether or not it remains that same site. But as it stands at the moment, it's Cowling Farm, which is the allocated site, and zero progress seems to have been made on it. So, thanks.
No, it is complex. It's a very complex area to get building on there and everything else, if I remember rightly. But must be going back about 18 months since it came to cabinet or council about it. Howard, do you want to respond to?
Thank you. Yes, no, all good points. The Bryn School Baths and Cowling Farm are the ones where they're on hold because of the changeover in staffing. So those ones we will get a response in terms of that from the Commercial Services Directorate. CCTV, we will pick that up with ICT. I know that there has been some work around the relocation to the Strawberry Fields element, and there have been meetings with the police around that on terms of obviously moving it from the police station into Strawberry Fields. So there's some work moving forward there, but the initial issues that have been around the overall CCTV renewals is again staff vacancies. But again, I'll pick that up with ICT to see where that is at, because there has been quite significant recruitment within the ICT services as part of the shared services. So again, I can pick that one up. Democratic Services Committee, I will check that one and get you an update as to where that individual project is up to. I'll ask Darren Cranshaw to give us an update.
Any more questions? Yes, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask a question under paragraph 24? About the ICT disaster recovery plan, saying that it be completed once the rollout of devices is concluded. Do we know how far off we are for that rollout?
So the rollout for ICT here at Chorley it's fairly sort of a long way on now. So that shouldn't actually be too much longer. I can get an exact date. There are some issues with more at South Ribble in terms of the rollout, and it's based on particular services and some of the systems that they have, but it has been much swifter at Chorley. So with the ICT disaster recovery and some of the elements, again, around, I think, some of the audit elements, they're playing into each other. So once we can get one sorted, we can move into the other. But I will get Emma to provide an update just as to where that is up to in terms of the services covered. But the understanding we have is that it's quite far along with Chorley, and that we're pretty much there. We just have probably some isolated areas that we need to be moving with. So I'll get that update for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Roy.
Right, thank you, Chair. Going back on the CCTV, like you say, it's going to Strawberry Fields. Currently, it's at the police station. Who mans it at the police station? Are they our council staff or is it the police?
I don't know who actually operates the CCTV, so I'd have to come back to you on that one, because that's...
Because I presume it's 24 hours or at least up till midnight. Or
Again, I wouldn't actually know how the CCTV itself operates. The moving to the new digital hub, and obviously the police station next door will be moving itself in terms of the police relocating to the new, well, the old Runshaw College site. But I don't have that information. I can certainly go back and find out who operates it.
I'm just wondering, you know, I mean, there were talk about when the police do move to Exton Lane, they were talking about having it was suggested at a meeting, I don't know when, was it a couple of weeks ago? They were going to have a hub in the centre of Chorley when they had the police sergeant down, do you remember?
Yeah, I think
And he said that they were probably going to have a building in town, just like a satellite office. And obviously, you know, to me, I'm looking at, if we are going to be manning the one in Strawberry Fields, what combined have we got use between the police and our staff? Could there be a delay in getting response if there's any serious troubles? That's my concern. And that's, I can go on to another one. And under, where are we? Page 18, under public protection, animal welfare, review and implementation of an animal activities licence procedure. What exactly does that entail?
The ultimate detail of the animal licensing procedure, I don't know what that is, but the animal welfare policies, like I say, the animal welfare is not being affected at the moment. It's around the way that they can look at the policies and implement those. So I think with the animal activities licensing, it could range. So I'll have to come back to you. That would be Laura in the environmental protection or public protection.
Does that, I mean, what I'm trying to get is, does that mean if you're in charge of animals, then you need a licence to do it? You know, like pet shops, or
yes,
or does it refer to private pets, or?
Yes, I'm not sure whether it wouldn't necessarily be about private pets, but I think it could be around sort of the licensing for selling or activities where you use animals. So could be breeding or things like that. So I just need to probably clarify what the activities side of that is, but we can certainly come back to you on that. And I think that won't be a problem.
No,
yeah.
One thing comes to mind, it's the animal hedgehog rescue centre. Would that be included? Would they need a licence for operating that?
I don't know. You stumped me on the animal welfare licensing there. So I mean, obviously, because it goes quite operational into what public protection do. In terms of the sort of reasons why it's amber, I know it's because of particular issues with capacity, and that it's the recruitment struggles that they have within environmental protection. So the priority is to the actual animal welfare and their health and safety. So I will come back to you.
If you can finally, get
I'll
some more
find out
details
what,
on that for
what
me,
the
please,
actual
yeah.
welfare policy will do. Yeah, I can come
Right,
back
thank
to you
you.
on that.
Any further questions? Howard, on public protection, I see there's three items on hold. Roy's mentioned one, animal welfare. Health and safety, there's two from health and safety, one on children's amusement services, like inflatables that they put in various children's playgrounds and what have you, which I thought would be quite, they've got to have policies and rules and regulations, because you can get blown away and all sorts of things can happen, can't it really? So I thought that would have been a priority to get that one done. And then health and safety on electrical safety in hospitality settings. Again, these are important things that we should be getting stuck up. I think these three were on the hold situation last time when we brought it up. So I do feel that you should be putting pressure on the people who are dealing with health and safety to get these policies in place. Or we might be in trouble. You never know. If we haven't got a policy and there's an accident, then we could be liable as council.
Especially while it's been raised at the meeting like this.
Yeah, that's right. That's
We
right.
know about it.
I can, the three that are there on health and safety, on safe use of inflatable amusement devices, the hygiene allergen awareness training and the electrical safety, they're awareness campaigns as opposed to policies. So they're the themes that are set by the HSE and FSE, and obviously it would be good practice to highlight some of those issues. So it's around the proactive work that they would be doing with those, people in hospitality services, or when people sell inflatable sort of amusement devices. So it's around a prevention and a sort of proactive campaign. So it's not impacting the statutory duties of the council. And I think that's the key message from public protection. But clearly, it would be beneficial if we could go out and raise awareness, do more education and proactive work. So we can take that fully on board, and I know Laura Jean will be more than happy to provide further information to the committee around what does happen from a statutory basis, and sort of how we actually regulate and make sure people are safe. This, like I say, these are around the kind of like awareness raising and kind of proactive campaigns.
Well, if you keep pressure on them, please, because
I will try.
And this one on food safety, delivery of food hygiene and allergen awareness. I mean, things like nut allergies that people die within a couple of hours if they eat nuts, and in a restaurant where they're supposed to be nuts aware. But it is a problem if people aren't trained up to the level they should be, really. So that's...
Absolutely, I will take that back.
Yeah, if you could just put pressure on them, please. I don't think I've anything else on this. I mean, I say things are going on fairly well. It's a question of keeping pressure on all the departments to fulfil their obligation of what they should be doing, really. So, any other further questions? Yes, Kim. Sorry.
I have missed one off my list. On the Ambers, the environmental crime enforcement policy, I just checked my emails, and Tracy Brzezowski sent myself and Mark Clifford a draft of that policy on the 28th of May 2021. So we've not got it in place still. It's nearly 2 years. So clearly I perhaps should have asked the previous speakers, because it comes under planning and development. But it's quite a biggie, because it concerns people, in terms of environmental crime and that. And if they've already drafted the policy, it's going to be outdated. That was 2 years ago.
Well, that's right. Yes, I mean, basically, we should, if we're going to do a policy in any particular year, we should do it, It's not good to put it back, because new laws come in and things change, don't they, all the time.
I can come back in on that one. So some of it has been due to staff absence. So that's why there's been a delay, and this is probably where the background work has been done. But it now needs to be progressed through the head of service. So you can see there probably what reflects what was presented earlier was some of the challenges with the recruitment within that side of the service, and effectively, because there hasn't been the officer there, it's not moved forward. But that is looking now to be progressed through the head of service. So that it's amber means there is a plan to move forward. But again, I can put a little bit more kind of pressure to go back and say the committee would like to kind of know if there's a bit more of a timeline in terms of when that one can come forward.
Okay. Anything else, Kim? No, that's it. Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, well, thank you for that report. As I say, in this municipal year, it's nearly over. So some of these should have really been completed, but haven't been completed. So keep on top of the officers and get them to get cracking and finalise their policies. Okay, well, I've no further business. So can I thank you for attending this evening? And before I let you go, can I just thank Matthew this year for clerking these committee meetings. You've done a great job. You're very patient with me. And can I thank also members of the committee? I think it's been a very good year, performance panel. We've kept the directors or senior officers under scrutiny, and they had to answer quite a lot of interesting and technical details about their directorate. So thank you for that. Okay, and safe journey home. Thank you.